Hello and welcome to Drive and Double Feature Podcast. I'm Nathan.
I'm Ryan.
And this is the podcast where we talk about 2 movies a week every Tuesday and Thursday. But before we get into today's episode, be sure to head on over to our Patreon. We have a bunch of bonus episodes over there, and you help support us for $5 a month. Really helps us out. But no main show content is locked behind there. But let's get into this Tuesday's movie with 1980's The Watcher in the Woods, directed by John Hough? Hugh?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a Disney movie, guys. We're back at it again with a Disney flick. Um, I
Now, now you got to imagine this has got to be Walt Disney's like true vision, right? This movie.
yeah. I think, what would Walt Disney do was asked many times for this movie, and I think that's why we got it, because I was like, this is what Disney wanted. It's funny that you say that. So just to let the listeners know, just in case you don't know, Watcher in the Woods is a supernatural horror movie made by Disney. It's not like a hardcore horror movie, but it does have horror elements. That's the idea. And they actually asked Roy Disney when he thought about this movie, and he actually said that I don't think Disney would have, or Walt would have made it, but I don't think he'd be upset that we made it. so
Walt Disney. I just imagine Walt Disney just fuming, just like
yeah.
stomping around the studio, like I can't believe they made this movie under my name.
Yeah, no, exactly. And technically they kind of didn't. Well, they did, but it in the opening credits we do not get a Walt Disney Pictures. We just get Buena Vista Pictures, because this is before Touchstone Pictures and what's the other one? Hollywood Pictures?
Miramax?
No, Miramax. Yeah, this is before we got all. Well, no, there's like another one, but all the other, the one that Sixth Sense was made under.
I think you're just making this up.
I am not. Yeah, Hollywood Pictures. Yeah, it has like the little it's like the
The
Sphinx. Yeah, that's a Disney.
Like it's Encino Man.
Encino Man was was a Hollywood picture.
That's what I recognize that logo from.
That's funny. But yeah, anyway, this is before that whole era where Disney was branching out, and they wanted to branch out, but then they still kept it under the Disney name. Especially with the CEO and president at the time, Ron Miller, which Ron Miller was the the son-in-law of Walt Disney. And he became CEO at this time, probably in Disney's darkest hour, 1980 to 1984, which is kind of like, as the kids would say nowadays, their flop era, right? Like when it's like bombs, like Tron, this was a bomb, like a lot of issues in the 80s. I think the 80s, we only saw like a handful of Disney animated movies too.
What are you talking about? The most successful movie, Black Cauldron, came out that decade.
Yeah, Black Cauldron. I mean, that is, aside from everything else, the Black Cauldron was their one hit, beat out Little Mermaid. Yeah, you guys are probably out there like, what is that?
What's Little Mermaid?
Little Mermaid, never heard. Yeah, see, you don't even know. Yeah. But no, as you can tell, I actually got interested in this movie because I like looking at Disney's live action output, because they've put out so many movies, and so many like weird movies that like nobody talks about. Like, you always bring it up, The Ugly Dachshund. Yeah, you're probably the only person that brings up The Ugly Dachshund, and I think that's so funny that Disney has like these weird live action movies that no one's talking about.
It's like, what, Father Goose,
the Apple Dumpling Gang,
Gus,
yeah.
The computer wore tennis shoes.
Yeah, just like weird movies that just like kind of, I don't know, they're just interesting that they exist. And I thought this would be an interesting one because it is a horror movie, and CEO Ron Miller called it, he in an interview said, "This is our Exorcist." Which is a very lofty goal to go for. So go ahead.
I'm sure it got just as much praise at the box office, right?
No, so I guess might as well get into it.
Well, it got nominated for a bunch of Academy Awards, like The Exorcist did too, right?
No, you got another one.
all these people went on to very successful careers, like The
Yeah,
Exorcist.
no. Yeah. No, yeah, no, exactly. This movie was a huge bomb. It only made 5 million on a $9 million budget, and this is actually technically a 1981 movie because it released in 1980, and it was critically so panned that they took it out, redid the ending, and re-released it. So this is just like got an interesting story behind it. Well, okay, interesting story in real life. For the movie, let's
For
get
the
into the
movie,
movie.
very boring.
Yes, yeah. Well, let's get into it. All right. So this movie sets up, we have a family who is moving in or looking for a new home to live in, and they kind of find a castle in the woods. And if there's one thing that I do like about this movie, it's the camera work. So it has like that Friday the 13th feel where they're driving down the road and the camera's almost like a first person, like somebody watching them through the woods, just like the name of the
Hmm.
movie. And I was like, oh, that's really inventive. I like that a lot. Um, but they do get to the house, and guess who lives there? Betty Davis lives there. Oh my God. Yeah,
That's my dream when I come home. I bet Betty Davis is there
yeah,
at my
exactly.
house.
Yeah, wouldn't that be awesome? Yeah, no, yeah. So that's it. That she lives there. Her daughter went missing years ago. She has never been the same, and this family has to live with Betty Davis, kind of living in a side home away from them. Now, would you take this deal? Live in a mansion, but you have to have an old lady living right next to you, and it's a steal. 1,000. I think they said 1,000 a week, a month.
I mean, I've already got an old lady living next to me right now, and I have to pay extra for that.
That's true. That's true. That's the way it is nowadays. Let's say, I guess if it was Betty Davis, it'd be you would definitely do it, right?
Oh yeah, I mean,
Mhm.
hush, hush, sweet Charlotte, please.
Yeah, watch her in the woods, please. Come on. um, but no, so they all hang out, and I mean, like, I'm trying to think of any like funny moments, any interesting big moments in this movie. Um,
Well, no, okay, hold on. Like,
okay, okay,
um, I do have one funny thing I do like about this movie is the is that this little girl is like kind of like I guess like the messenger for this for the
yeah.
dead girl, quote dead girl,
Hmm.
and she always like she's always like saying stuff, but she's like so clueless. She's like because her older sister will walk in and be like, "Why were you talking in your sleep?" Like, I wasn't talking, you were talking. And I'm like, no, like they're like, I came in here and clearly you were talking. What are you talking about?
Yeah, it's honestly a little annoying because that's the whole movie. Is be like, you need to go to the woods, and then she'll be like, where? Or you need to go and where? And she's just like, I don't know. What just happened? It's a little annoying.
um, but I do one other funny bit. So they go out into the woods because like that's like the whole thing is like they're like they would hear like these strange noises or they would see
Mhm.
something, and they try to go look for it. And then, like the main girl, and her name in the movie was what was it? It was Jan. That's
Jan.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So she would like go out there, and her little sister Ellie would try to like tag along or whatever. But there's like a scene where Jan like falls in the water,
Yes,
and
that's right.
she's all tangled up in like the weeds underwater, and she's stuck. And then then Betty Davis comes like running out of nowhere and like grabs a log and like starts pushing Jan down like further underneath the water.
Yeah, with like
And
a big stick.
yeah, and they're like, stop, you're drowning her. And then it's like immediately cut to, it's like, boy, that's a good thing she was pushing you down so much to get you out of those weeds.
Yeah.
And they're
All
like,
the
what?
Yeah. Also, that shot where she's pushing her down into the water is like horrifying because like she's like clearly in the water, like her eyes are wide open. She's reaching for the camera, and that scene goes on for forever. I remember watching it and thinking like, wow, she's holding her breath for this long, in terms of the movie. But I guess she almost drowned.
Yeah, I did like they did have like an underwater shot. I actually
Hmm.
did like in that one where I was like, oh, that's actually looks pretty good. And
Yeah, yeah.
like
No,
that's probably like you said, the standout is like the cinematography of the movie.
yeah, and some of the special effects are pretty cool. Like, so the daughter Karen, which, come on, guys, really, we got a Karen in this movie? I that's like a low blow. I don't know. I can't do that. But anytime she pops up, a triangle cuts out. So like she'll like see the main daughter Jan will see her in the mirror, and it cuts out like a triangle in glass or in mirrors, which I think is a cool effect. Um, there is one funny name part with the name of Karen because that becomes an important thing because the the youngest daughter Ellie has a dog and names it Narek, which is Karen backwards, and she writes it backwards on a window. And I was so like, when I saw that, I was like, is this movie going to do one of those dumb things where everybody's like, Narek, that's weird. What does that mean? But no, almost everyone instantly is like, it's Karen backwards. We get it.
Yeah,
So I'm like,
like
okay, they
not
didn't do that stupid route.
well. I mean, like because the girl writes Karen backwards
Hmm.
in a window,
Yeah.
and they're like, well, "Where'd you learn that name?" It's like Narek told me. It's like,
Yeah.
I'm like what? Like,
Yeah. And then literally after they're like, oh, it's Karen backwards.
well,
Um,
yeah, I. It's funny because I do have a family member in my
yes.
family named Karen,
Yeah.
and that's
Which
like one of the that with that's there's like an inside joke where like we would always write our names backwards on like
really?
gifts, and so she was called Nick a lot of times,
That's
and I didn't,
really funny.
and I never knew that that was part of this movie.
So that's a funny connection to real life. I like that a lot.
Yeah,
That's funny. But yeah, that dog is named Narek for the rest of the movie. And we kind of like learn the backstory of what happened to Karen. So I guess she was a new kid on the block, and all of the kids in the town brought her to a church. And I guess they were doing a ritual, like kind of an occult ritual to make her a permanent friend forever. Well, somehow in all of this, she just disappears, and we don't learn how until the last 2 minutes of the movie. So we kind of have that mystery. Personally, I would have liked if this mystery played a little bit better. So I think for me, it focuses too much on the kids, and I actually thought the story about the adults dealing with the trauma of them disappearing and covering up to be the more interesting story, even if we've seen that before in other movies.
yeah, because you don't really get like you don't spend that much time with the people that were actually affected by the incident, and it's a
Hmm.
lot of the kids like going like ooh spooky, like out in the woods, and they're like,
Uh-huh.
oh man, like stuff like that. No, but what this movie actually reminded me of is that show Are You Afraid of the Dark? Because like this is
Mm.
exactly like the type of horror like they would probably put on like that show where it's like kids vaguely dead, like but there's no like scary imagery, and it's like oh like this incident happened so long ago, and it's like kids have to solve the mystery. So that's
Hmm.
kind of what it felt like like an elongated episode of that.
I,
So
now that you say that, yeah, definitely. Because it is that type of spooky. Like, it's not really scary. Like, I actually think it would be fine for kids. Like, I was thinking about it. Like, if I watched this when I was a kid, I'd be perfectly fine. It would be a little spooky, which is like kind of crazy because, like, at the time, people were pretty upset and didn't understand why Disney would produce something like this. But watching it now, seems like a fine Disney movie. Like, I don't know, they got Halloween
it
Town and crap like that.
it's very tame. I mean,
Yeah.
like I said, it's if this is probably like this is probably like maybe like probably like the Haunted Mansion like movie is probably a little scarier than this.
Yeah, probably more jump scares and stuff like that, which,
So, no, yeah. I was just saying like it's a very tame movie. Like like there are like some little jump scares, and
mhm.
they're like like, oh, like she was in like her bedroom and then like a cat. Do you know she like gets hit by animals a lot in this movie?
Yeah, you're right.
Like there's like a cat hits her and then like a bird like literally gets like thrown in her, like literally like it looks like a bird was like thrown at her in her
I'm sure it
face.
was, I'm sure the director was like, if you want to be a serious actor, you got to take a bird to the
You gotta
face.
take a bird to the face, honey.
Yeah, it's just taking out all the anger out on her of
Well,
directing.
yeah, before like people cared if animals died or not.
Exactly. Yeah. There is a funny bit that I do on a pre-production. So there is a flashback in this movie to Betty Davis when she was younger because she recounts what happened to Karen. And there is a young version of her. And I did read that they wanted to hire Betty Davis to play the younger
Oh,
role.
well, I read that she was the one that insisted
Yeah,
on that.
sorry. I should say
Yeah.
that. She was the one who insisted that she be hired for or that
and
she do
and
it. And they let her
and
do it.
and mind you, at this point, she's
80, I believe, or 70.
72.
Okay.
So it's like a 72-year-old woman's like, oh, which I mean, now she probably could because now like all those people like get like plastic surgery and things like that.
Yeah.
I think of like Jane Fonda, who has like who's like 80 something, but it's like doesn't look, she's got like such smooth skin now because she's had like plastic surgery.
Yes, yeah. No, but Betty Davis, she's looking old in this role, definitely old lady role. But I guess they filmed it, and I'm looking for the line that she said because it made me laugh.
Oh, she said they're like, looks like you're a little too old. She's like, God damn, you're right.
Yeah, and she's smoking a cigarette while she says this, which I love
Yeah.
that visual. But so yeah, that didn't work out. That's probably the only like really interesting part of like that because otherwise that's a very like it's a minor scene in the movie. There is another funny scene. This movie takes a break to have a motorcycle race because there's a boy named Mike that lives in town, and we see some motorcycle racing and her
He is such a like waste of
He's
space,
so boring.
honestly.
It's almost like we wanted like a love interest, but there's no connection there. They don't do anything.
He's like, you could erase him from like almost every scene in this movie and it wouldn't make a difference.
Exactly. Yeah, he does nothing except for the one scene where well, it's not his motorcycle, but someone like falls at the motorcycle race and it almost hits Jan, but Ellie warns her, is like, Jan, move! And then then the motorcycle flies and explodes where she was standing. After that scene, it becomes a stormy night, and we kind of learn a little bit more about how the eclipse is tied to it, and we got to get everyone at the church to get her back.
No, I did want to mention like the scene like before where like because they do show, like you said, like the three people that were performing like the ritual when they were younger, like that they're
Hmm.
older now, and like one of them's like this guy, he's like really creepy, and like
Hmm.
Jan is like in the chapel like trying to search for clues about it, and he just kind of appears and he thinks it's like the ghost of Karen, and
Uh-huh.
he's just like walking over to her, and she's like, "No, please," and like he has to like physically touch her, like he like strokes her hair. It's like, oh, you're real.
Yeah,
It's like
yeah.
you haven't come to haunt us. I'm like, ugh, that's so awful.
Yeah. And then they have a scene, just the two of them alone in his shed, and there's dead animals in there. Um, right? That's the same character. Yeah, yes, yeah. But they have that whole conversation where they talk about ringing around the rosy. That's what they did because he's kind of crazy from the whole situation. He's gone a little mad. He's gone a little weird.
Yeah,
Um,
it happens.
yeah, yeah. When you see a girl that you did an occult ritual with and she disappears, I think I get it.
It
Um,
happened to me.
really? You want to talk about that on the show?
No, it's unrelated, so let's keep going.
Oh, okay, sounds good. We will never talk about it again. But they do come together as adults, and the ending of this movie they went back, reshot it, and there's actually like forget the number, but it was like a staggering number of different endings that they had written for this movie. Because I guess they didn't know what to do, which is
What
insane.
what were the other endings?
I had them written down. They weren't that interesting. Well, sorry, except for one. That's right. That the Watcher would actually appear. And it was, this is how it's described: a skeletal insectoid alien picks up Jan and they disappear together.
So
Um,
then, so like, but did so they didn't even get Karen back.
um, well, hold on. No, okay. So no, there's more. They go fly across to an alien spaceship where they enter, and Karen is trapped inside a prism, and then they save her from the prism. But yeah, there was a bunch of endings, but the one we get here is definitely like a happy ending where Jan is standing in the circle. There's a giant light, wind's going, Ellie's speaking through, like the Watchers speaking through her, because I guess there was an interdimensional tangle and she ended up in a different dimension. She was trapped, but she comes back. And guess what? Just as she comes back, Bette Davis comes in and she's like, Karen, it's you. I don't, that didn't make sense because, like, oh, now Bette Davis stumbles into the church after
Yeah, like of
everything's
all,
done.
yeah, she just shows up at like, I just decided to show up. Well, I mean, she does give him a warning beforehand, being like, no, I don't want
Mm-hmm.
it to happen to you too.
Mm-hmm.
And but did they? I was trying to piece together. So the Karen that comes back, was that a young Karen, or was she like, or did she age? I couldn't tell.
She looked young. I thought she was like a young Karen, but
Like, so she.
I couldn't really tell either. But because I didn't know how they were gonna play it.
That's why I was wondering. I was like, did she age or what? And that to me, it looked like she didn't, because she was still like in her little childhood dress and everything.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm like, it's like, God, it's like you're like a 70-year-old woman, and then you got to like take care of like a 12-year-old.
Yeah, that would suck, right? Like, oh God. Well, then you just pawn it off to the family next door.
Yeah, I mean, they got to live. They're already getting cheap rent. What's another mouth to feed, right?
Exactly. Who knows if this little girl is like a hellion, like an awful kid, mean, spoiled, and now they got
Yeah.
to take care
Well,
of
yeah,
her.
they never said what Karen, like, if Karen was like a good child, did they?
No, yeah, because usually it would be like, oh, she was such a good kid, and she just left one day. No, we don't. Karen, not really, doesn't really have a character.
No, what that's the biggest problem with this movie, is that nobody has like a real personality. Just
Yeah, I agree. I think it's kind of the cast too. I mean, other than Bette Davis, of course, but like our two lead young actors, I don't care. They're not
yeah.
great. Nobody's really great in this movie.
No, I mean, nobody's really that good. I mean, like the parents, it's like whatever. I don't like
Hmm.
they're not interesting. Like Bette Davis is like the only thing that's like close to being interesting. Because
Hmm.
like, even, I mean, like some, like even like the supporting, like I guess maybe the supporting cast, where it's like the people that are actually like dealt with what they went through. But even then, it's like you don't spend that much time with them. So
Yeah, almost to the point where like the movie's an hour in and you get introduced to like one of the three, like as an adult. And I was sitting there like, who is this? Because like the creepy guy's like, oh, somebody, they're back and checking things out, and it's like, no, that's the supporting cast, a little bland. Uh,
yeah.
but no, I think overall this movie is fine. I don't hate it, don't love it. It was interesting. I think it's interesting just as like a piece of history, but not the most entertaining movie.
No, it's a fine movie. I didn't hate it. It's just like very dull. Like,
Yeah.
just kind of dull, and it's like no, it's very inoffensive. There's nothing like overly bad, but
Yeah.
it's not interesting to me all that much, and like it's just such very weak characters that don't
Hmm.
really leave an impression. So,
Yeah.
I mean, for me, it's like, yeah, I didn't hate it, but I don't think I'd recommend it either.
No, I wouldn't recommend it either. If you're looking for like a dark Disney movie, I feel like Black Cauldron does this a lot better. And it's even scarier as an animated movie than this
Yeah,
movie is, like at least visually.
yeah, like I'm trying to think of like what would even be like a good kids horror movie. Like, Ernest Scared Stupid. There you go. That's a better horror movie for
Well, yeah,
kids.
I agree with that. I'm sure there's something I'm forgetting, but
Hocus Pocus. Darn it.
yeah, yeah. What about is there an actual scary kids movie?
I was scared during Ernest Scared Stupid.
Oh, you were? I'm laughing at you. We're laughing at you, Ryan. Me and the listeners. but no, yeah. I think TV is where like I got scared the most as a kid. I felt like I didn't see as many like scary kids horror movies, but like Goosebumps and Are You Afraid of the Dark and like a few cartoon episodes, like the Rugrats episode with the giant baby. You know, that's where I was
That
getting
was
scared.
scary.
Yeah, I hated that episode. Everyone's laughing at me. But no, I think it's interesting, but no recommends from both of us. But Ryan, what are we covering on Thursday?
Well, Nathan, like I said, we're dipping our toes into some Marvel movies here, and like I'm like, it's time to talk about Marvel and personally, my favorite Marvel character and your favorite Marvel character is obviously Thor.
Yeah,
So
love that guy.
I mean, like when I got done watching Thor: Dark World, I said, please more.
It won't get better than this.
So we're going to talk about the very first Thor movie from 2011 called The Almighty Thor, and that is for free on Tubi right now. So go over there and watch it.
Well, I'm excited to dip our toes into Marvel, but if you want to send us an email, you can email us at driveanddoublefuturepodcast@gmail.com. Send us some recommendations. You can also tweet at us over at X at DIDFpod. But until next time.
Until next time.